Hello everybody and welcome to this video. It's a student exemplar for English language paper 1 question 5, and you can see the question the student has attempted is right at the beginning of a short story based on fear and terror. Now when I'm marking question 5s, the first thing I do is just scan over the answer and look at paragraph length, and you can see without even reading the sort of paragraph lengths the student has used. Now, you can say, what's going on here? Well, there's this kind of short single sentence paragraph thing, and that looks interesting, and that's certainly something we'll look at. But apart from that, the actual major paragraphs are all pretty much the same length, apart from the final end of the text, which is a single sentence. So what I want to say first of all is that one of the immediate things that an examiner is going to notice just from looking at the page is the length of your paragraphs and your variety of paragraphs lengths or lack of it. So try to mix up your paragraph lengths. Now, clearly the student has done that because they've got lots of single sentence paragraphs, and that's interesting. But apart from that, everything is about the same. So mixing up paragraph lengths is really important, and it's one of the things that an examiner will notice right away. So this was right at the beginning of a short story based on fear and terror. Now, an interesting question because it is right at the beginning of a short story, and one of the temptations with this question 5 is to write the entire thing, and that is not what you want to do. Okay, so the beginning of a short story. So let's have a look, and it starts with 4 minutes to go. I like that. Single sentence paragraph for effect, draws the reader in, grabs their attention thinking, well, to go till what? Creates tension, makes the reader want to read on. It's a really good structural feature, and right away I do want to read on. Palms sweating, head aching, she sunk to the cold tiled floor. At least there she could find comfort. Further away from the sirens of anticipation ricocheting around the bleak corridor, echoing over and over in her drowned mind. Okay, so let's pause here for a second. I like the sensory description of the palm sweating and the head aching, and I like the vocabulary of ricocheting. The semicolon isn't quite right. A semicolon links two sentences that are about the same topic, and it's not a complete sentence to say further away from the sirens of anticipation. It should be a comma there because that's just a continuation of the previous part of the sentence, because it doesn't have a subject. So, it would be correct if it said something like she was further away, and then it has a subject in that sentence. Every sentence has to have a subject and a verb and make sense on its own. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, check out the grammar guide at mrbruff.com or the grammar playlist. Panic surged through our system like a drug, rocketing through veins, surging through arteries and beating in her brain. People swarmed around her in a claustrophobic embrace, chattering, whispering, laughing, but all noise was poison to her ears. She was trapped. Okay, now what I love here is the deliberate use of emotive language: claustrophobic, beating, surging, rocketing. Your choice of vocabulary, descriptive words, can create such a strong impression upon the reader. And one of the common mistakes with a story or a piece of work like this is that students often overdo it. So this is a true story. I taught a class of 54 students once, team taught a class, and they had to write a story, and it was based on a similar thing. Well, actually, it wasn't even necessarily negative. But of all 54, I would say 50 of the pieces of work included either stabbings or guns or explosions or blood. And it's better to be subtle. There are marks awarded for that subtlety. And one of the things you can do to be subtle is you can include highly emotive vocabulary like claustrophobic, beating, rocketing, surging, but actually not a great deal is actually happening in terms of the plot of the story or the piece of writing that is overly kind of dramatic. And this is a great example of that. And I love this short sentence, she was trapped. I think the way that the long sentence before it is followed by a very short sentence creates this really strong impression. 3 minutes to go. Now I like this because single sentence paragraphs for effect are a really good thing to do, but what I like here is that you can see there is a pattern throughout the piece, and that is even more impressive because it becomes a structural feature in itself. Desperately, she attempted to grasp some form of courage from somewhere, but only managed to grasp the coloured pencils in her quivering hands. Those pencils, the pencils that she'd elaborately packed in her bag the night before, when everything that was tinged with a cocktail of excitement mixed with slightest hint of nervousness. Now all she felt was pure, undiluted terror, ongoing and rampaging inside of her mind like some sort of beast, as black as the darkest ebony pencil held in her fingers. Now, I've got a sense about what this is about. I wonder if you have. But isn't this a really nice piece of writing, this paragraph? So we've started a sentence with an adverb in the word desperately there, um, which is, very, good to mix up your sentence openings. And one of the things I will say about descriptive and narrative writing, and it's the same in paper 2, question 5, is that when you're writing a piece, you so often get carried away thinking about the ideas. But the ideas, the content, are not the only thing you should think about. You know that there are marks for spelling, punctuation, and grammar, and this student has clearly thought about how to use their spelling, punctuation, and grammar as well. 2 minutes to go. The clock told her of her inevitable fate. A mere 120 seconds separated her from her unavoidable doom, doom that was already blossoming like some sort of blackened lethal fungus inside her heart. Fingers on her temples, she forced oxygen down her clogged airways into her empty lungs as the roar in her brain turned into a din. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Beautiful again, short sentences for effect, repetition for effect, this really poetic language. And I talk about, I think, what day am I putting this up? Sunday. So in yesterday's video, the Stormzy rap, I talk about this idea of having almost poetic language in your writing. And then we've got, this is really almost like a poem turned into prose, isn't it? 1 minute to go. Rasping, eyes glazed, she was trapped. She wrapped her arms around her convulsing body. This was it. The icicles of the brick wall behind her seemed to comfort her, prepare her at least, but she hardly noticed. All she could focus on was the frantic beat of her heart, perfectly in time with the precious amount of seconds she had left before the death toll of the bell rang out. Thud, 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 breathe, thud, breathe, thud, thud. A bell rang. The girl gathered her pencils, stood up on her unsteady legs, and stumbled into the GCSE exam room. Dun, dun, dun! Yes, if you guessed it, well done. And this is such a great example of answering a question like this because it's not over the top. It's not this kind of big extravaganza of action and blood and guts and all the rest of it. No, this is just a story about an exam that is a moment of fear and terror. And I can tell you, if that was the question right at the beginning of a story based on fear and terror, most students would write about, blood and guts and knives and guns and that kind of thing. The subtlety of this is great. Now, what do I think about it? I think it's very, very good. If anything, I would say that the single word sentence bit is perhaps slightly overdone. I would just maybe not have quite so many examples because with all things in English language in the paper 1 and paper 2 question 5, so when you're talking about using a semicolon to link two sentences that are about the same topic, when you're talking about having a sentence variety, so starting with an adverb, when you're talking about having single sentence paragraph for effect or varied sentence length, we don't want to be doing too much of it, okay? So I would probably just slightly do a bit less of that, but I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think this is a great example. So if you enjoyed it, give the video a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching.